You ever watch a horror movie and just feel home? Not because it's something that's comforting or safe, but because it feels like something that was made by someone who actually understands what made horror we grew up with so special in the first place. That rush, that feeling that you're watching something a little dangerous, a little creative, a little unhinged, but absolutely, genuinely entertaining. It's no secret that for years now I've been pretty honest about how most modern horror just doesn't hit the same way it used to. A lot of it feels cold, mean, nihilistic, and it's more interested in making you feel depressed and punished than taking you on a wild, scary, fun ride like the movies that we grew up with and rented every Friday night. But every once in a while, a movie sneaks through that feels like it was made with some love, some creativity, and practical magic, as the golden age of 70s, 80s, and 90s horror used to do. So today, I want to have a real, honest conversation about those movies, the ones that prove that they still make horror like they used to. So pop that tape in. I got you. Let's go do this. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. I am Chase with ABA Pop Culture, and today we are diving into these horror movies that still feel like the old days, the good old days, the golden era of horror. And listen, I know that I don't really like a lot of modern horror movies. I've made no secret about that. And people are like, what's going on? You've made horror movies for over 20 years. You make sort of horror movies in the modern era. You don't like horror movies. Well, listen, I do like horror movies, but I like them that feel like they are made with love, that they are made to entertain us. I grew up on the VHS tapes. I grew up on late night cable hosts, Elvira and Joe Bob Briggs, practical effects magic, guys in rubber suits, the effects and the stunts that look like they actually hurt, the stuff that we loved enjoying, the exploitation angle, the morality tales, films that had real personality that stood the test of time. That whole era from the late 70s through the 80s and on into the early 90s was something truly magical. Films that could be scary, funny, sleazy, creative, and entertaining all at the same time. And I'll be straight with you, a huge portion of modern horror has lost that balance. So much of it is just grim, oppressive, joyless, a celebration of evil, and just kind of bad vibes all around. It feels like it's trying to traumatize you rather than entertain you. But here's what's been giving me some hope lately. There are some movies here and there that sneak through the cracks that feel like spiritual successors to the horror we loved as kids. They are not perfect copies, really. They're films that carry that same spirit, though. They've got practical effects, they've got strong atmosphere, memorable characters, and that sense that the filmmakers were actually having fun making something a little dangerous, a little old school, a little over the top. And so I want to talk about these movies and films like them and why they matter so much to horror films and cinema in general going forward. So I want you to take this little trip with me right now in your minds back to the late 70s, the 80s, really that 80s horror boom with the VHS. The things just went hand in hand and it spread like wildfire. But that time was so alive because movies weren't just about gore or kills or pushing some kind of creepy, evil message on you or just celebrating torture in a realistic way. They weren't about that. It was about creativity and fun. The practical effects had more weight, they had more texture, they weren't CGI filled because that really wasn't around. They had a lot of wild, crazy ideas, the sense that anything could happen with movies like The Thing, American Werewolf in London, The Howling, Fright Night, The Fog, Near Dark, From Beyond, Reanimator. You could just go on, and that's not even getting into like Friday the 13th, Halloween, or A Nightmare on Elm Street. They had a mix of tones, just a lot of fun and heart to them. They could be terrifying one minute, darkly funny the next minute. They had so much personality, it brought them to life and made such a fun ride, you wanted to keep riding it again and again. That's what a lot of horror in the modern era has been missing. Too often it feels sterile, calculated, or just plain mean-spirited. But then a movie like Late Night with the Devil comes through, and suddenly it feels like somebody dug up effects from a past bygone era. You have what looks like a live 1970s television broadcast that slowly goes completely insane into Exorcist territory. That analog look, the practical effects, the way the dread builds, the way they used actual cameras and film from that era, that talk show format, that late night host that we all knew, that really captures the old, we're really doing something like this energy so perfectly. It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel like a studio product that's checked every box along the way. It feels like a movie that belongs on a worn out VHS tape found in the back of some old mom and pop video rental store, and that makes it awesome. It makes it stand out. It's literally one of the best modern horror movies I've seen in the past 25 years. And then you take a film like The Guest. This is another one that just nails it, right? This movie is a pure 80s love letter. This feels like Carpenter could have done this movie. It's done right. It's stylish, violent, darkly funny. It has some Halloween aesthetic to it and a very cool, crazy synth score. The lead character literally feels like he walked out of a John Carpenter or Walter Hill film even. There's some Walter Hill vibes in there. It has a perfect balance of tension, action, and fun that most current horror films are missing. Watching it feels like rediscovering an old favorite that you never knew existed. It's like it was plucked out of 1987 and dropped in to modern era. It's so crazy when you watch it. It doesn't feel like it belongs here and now, but that's what makes it so special. And then there's another of my favorite modern horror films that gives a great example of this. It's Summer 84. It captures something really special. It captures the 80s vibe. I was an 80s kid growing up at this time. It captures that adventure spirit, that excitement of being a kid in the 80s, riding your bikes around the neighborhood all summer, going on adventures, sensing that something sinister is happening right under everyone's nose, kind of unraveling this adventure on your own with your friends. It understands that type of nostalgia without being cheesy. It builds real tension the old-fashioned way with atmosphere, character work, and good story rather than just cheap jump scares. It feels like the kind of movie you would have watched on repeat like The Goonies until the damn thing wore out. It is a perfect example of modern horror done right by following the blueprint set back in the golden era. And then you have The Conjuring. The Conjuring is I think one of the scariest films I've ever seen. It's rated R, and it's not full of blood. It's not full of nudity or any kind of exploitation. It's just a damn scary story. And that is awesome. It's a classic, slow burn, haunted house story, haunted house style filmmaking, Amityville horror style that we grew up with. Practical effects, a patient atmosphere to the film, real scares instead of just nonstop noise and effects blaring at you to get a reaction cheaply. It reminded a lot of people that you don't need torture or nihilism or grief therapy to scare an audience. You just need craft, confidence, and respect for the genre. And then we have something that is a sequel to one of those great golden age horror films, The Shining. We have Doctor Sleep. And this one did something really brave. It respected the legacy of The Shining while telling its own story with real emotional weight to it, real practical craft to it, great acting, great filmmaking, great storytelling. Those overlooked sequences in this film and the way it handles the dread, the way it calls back to that time period, to that original movie, it felt like a real horror movie from another era. Great performances all the way around. It transports you to another place in time, and that is damn good storytelling. But of course, that golden era, it was filled with films that were also ridiculous premise, just go for it, guy in costumes and cool practical effects makeup type movies. And that's where you get a film like Wolfcop. Yes, Wolfcop. If you haven't seen Wolfcop, run, don't walk to watch Wolfcop, a gloriously stupid practical effects werewolf movie that doesn't apologize for it for 1 second. You have a werewolf who is also a cop, hence Wolf Cop. Look, they're not being coy about this at all. That is kind of like a throwback to old school stuff like Elves or really American Werewolf in London for sure, with that dark humor, just on the nose, great practical effects. It is a callback to those type of creature features that we love so much in the 80s, that golden era. Or a film that I absolutely love, Krampus. Now, I watched this one with my son this year. He's 15 years old, and he dug it too. It was so much fun. Not full of violence or gore or anything like that. It brought back that nasty, fun, little holiday horror with incredible creature work. This felt like something that Spielberg and Amblin Entertainment would have done, very much like Gremlins. It is very much a callback to the feel and the style of Gremlins, with those kind of nostalgic sort of horror movies with great creature features in them, entertaining, mix of scary, fun, all of that, just perfect, spot on chef's kiss with Krampus. It feels like it was plucked right out of the era with the Gremlins, and you have to love that. And then there was another movie in the modern era that's sort of one to rule them all, one to grab a little piece of everything we love out of 70s, 80s, 90s horror and drop it into one film, and then have the courage to point it out, talk about it, and sort of dissect everything that we love about those films, and that is Cabin in the Woods. This is basically a love letter to every horror movie we grew up watching. Written and really mostly done by Joss Whedon. I think you had Goddard in here too. They wrote it in a couple of days, like 5 days in a cabin in the woods. They wrote the film, and it shows you can see their love for that old horror coming through. It's very meta story. It's scary. It's got its violence. It's got tons of practical effects. Yeah, there's some CGI in there too, but all of this is so much practically done whenever they can. The final act is one of the most insane things, monster-wise, that has ever been put on screen. It hits all the tropes of the horror films that we grew up with, and it gives this cool reason why they are there. Like, why does everyone get horny and want to have sex in every horror movie that starts those morality tales? Why do they want to drink, have sex, all that? Well, because they're being manipulated into it. It's part of the stories that made us. It's part of the things that shaped our society, and there's a reason for it all, right? It digs into that. It's so cool. It respects the genre while poking fun at it at the same time, kind of the way Scream did, but it took it to another level. You have to love it. If you grew up in that golden era of horror movies, this has everything and an explanation for it all that makes sense. It's all a part of us, and that's what this movie is saying. You have to love that. These movies stand out so much because they remember the most important thing about the horror that we grew up with. First and foremost, it is supposed to be entertaining. It had personality. It was made with love instead of contempt for the audience. And it didn't try to push a certain message. It didn't try to make you feel a certain way. It didn't try to traumatize you. It didn't really hate most of its audience. It didn't hate its subject matter. It loved and embraced what it is. That is the biggest difference between so many of the movies we grew up with and the vast majority of the horror movies that we have now. But here's what excites me and gives me hope when I look at these films. And there's others that I could mention too, but we're at this interesting moment where a whole generation of directors like me who grew up with the exact same tapes that we did are finally getting the chance to make movies. And I wish they would get more. We are starting to become less reliant on the studio system to get our movies out there. I'm a veteran of these wars with independent horror filmmaking. It is hard to get your film out there, even to get it on something like Tubi where you can find my movies, other streaming services. It's hard, but we are getting to a point where we can reach audiences in different ways and bring these stories that we grew up with to life. So these people are getting a chance now. Hopefully we're starting to break through, because these are the type of filmmakers and fans that understand why The Thing still holds up 40 plus years later. They understand why practical effects will always be more endearing, cooler, and just hit way harder than CGI. They understand that horror can be scary, exploitive, and still fun at the same time. Every time one of these movies comes out and it finds an audience, it proves that that golden age spirit has never died. It's just waiting for the right people to carry the torch forward. It's waiting for those movies to come out so that we can go see them. And in a time when so much horror feels dark, nihilistic, grief-ridden, and joyless, these movies feel like a breath of fresh air to me. They remind me of why we fell in love with the horror genre in the first place. I genuinely believe we could enter a new chapter in filmmaking and horror movies if we focused on films like these. It might not be the majority yet, because you have to pick and choose these movies that fit that mold, but the bright spots can get brighter. They're trying. More of them are sneaking through, and more filmmakers are going to find a way to bring even more of them to you. And every time one of these movies succeeds, it makes it a little more likely that you'll get more of them. So yeah, they do still make horror like they used to. Sometimes they can do it. They should do it more. It might not be everywhere yet, but the ones that do it right feel extra special because of that. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What are some of the modern horror movies that made you feel like they still make horror movies like the old days, that feel like they could have been plucked out of the late 70s, the 80s, the early 90s? Which ones captured that golden age spirit for you? Have any of these that I mentioned fit that bill for you? Like, again, I could have come up with some more. These are just ones off the top of my head. Maybe I'll do a list of movies like this if you guys would like to see it. But if you enjoyed this deep dive, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. We are so close, as I record this, to 50,000 subscribers. We are less than 1,000 away. And let me know if there's any other topics that you want to see me dive into. I have a lot of videos planned, but I always love hearing your suggestions. And until next time, keep supporting the weird, creative, practical, and fun stuff that we grew up with, the stuff that had a little bit of morality tale to it, stuff that didn't try to make you feel bad, but tried to entertain you and take you on a fun ride, because that is what made us fall in love with horror in the first place. And that's what will keep the genre alive for generations to come. But hey, you know what you need to do? Be kind, rewind like always. This is Chase with AV Pop Culture, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye. I know.